Welcome to the show. Technical difficulties. Not my fault, though. I blame StreamYard. This is SEC Football Live here on the 440 Sports Network. That is Chris Marler. I am Braden Gall. Good to have you here. And obviously good to have anybody here who wants to hang out in the comments, give us a little thumbs up, ask questions, have fun. Chris, how are you, sir? It's good to see you, man. Haven't seen you in a while.
I know. I think it's been since media days last year. So
that is too long.
Yeah, I'm a little bit less hungover now than I was then, almost entirely. But yeah, man, I've been doing well. How you been?
I'm great. Dallas. Here we come. Just brisket up to my eyeballs in brisket. Can't wait for it. I can't wait for it. Yeah. So, all right, today on the show, like, I don't know about you, Chris, but first of all, tell everybody where they can find you. I know you're an excellent follow on Twitter when available.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's funny because, like, in my original bio, I said fun in moderation. And that has lived up to exactly the words that I wrote out. So Vern Funquist, CFB, we had the podcast Fourth and Wrong. We record it live Monday through Thursday, 8 p.m. on YouTube, Twitter, all that good stuff. Me and my co-host Tyler Huck. And now working with ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge as well. So all over the place.
There you go. And never a dull moment. Always excited to talk to you. Always creative and fun and interesting, and never know where you're going to take the product. So that's why I like working with you, man. All right. So I don't know about you, but if you would have taken like any of the one main story in the SEC offseason over the last like 3 years, just one of them, it would have probably been like one of the biggest stories of the last 10 years in college football. Okay, they added Texas, Oklahoma. Okay, the playoffs expanded. Okay, players are now getting paid. Okay, now they can transfer wherever they want to. Oh, now there's lawsuits about the video game coming back. Like, we could go on and on and on down the list. And if any one of these things had happened just by itself, we would be like, that's a huge fucking story.
Right.
Like Alabama, Oklahoma and Texas are coming to town. That's huge. Like, no divisions in the SEC. That's huge. So we spent so much time agonizing over all of that stuff and trying to figure it out and understand it. And I still don't think anything has changed on Saturday for anybody. Like, outside of private equity getting into this sport, which I think is the absolute worst possible idea.
Yeah.
Outside of private equity, which of course is designed to cut inefficiency, college football is built on a foundation of inefficiency. Outside of that, I still think everybody's experience on Saturday is basically the same. You go sit in the same section, you wear the same colors, you sing the same song with your friends, and you smoke your meat in the same parking lot, you cook your gumbo in the same parking lot. Yeah. You still go and root. Who cares if your player makes some money or if they're playing a conference game against Texas or whatever? I don't think anything has actually changed. So I think we should have lots of shit to look forward to and be excited about.
So I agree with you in the fact that, like, players getting paid, it does not change our experience. We're all still going to watch it and consume it because, like, for most of it, it's our favorite thing, right? Like, that's what it makes college football so unique. It's unlike any other sport because it is so flawed. It is so flawed and always has been. But it's still so fun. And, like, it's getting further and further away from what we are familiar with when we, like, grew up watching. But we're still going to watch it. I tell you, the only thing that does concern me, right? Like, private equity stuff, and then yesterday with the Jaden Rashada stuff, lawyers getting involved. The only thing that could be worse than the actual NCAA getting involved with NCAA sports are lawyers getting involved. So that part has me a little bit concerned about that. Man, we're all still going to watch.
Well, and so Jaden, for those that don't know, Jaden Rashada, of course, files a lawsuit, and it's not even like it's complicated. It's not really even about the money he wasn't promised. It was that the money was never real, and that that he's claiming that the boosters were fraudulent. But, like, there's no proof that there's never going to be any proof that Billy Napier did or didn't do anything. He's suing the booster as well. I just think I think there is an unfortunate period of time that was like a 4 to 6 year window here, whatever it's going to be,
right?
Where we're going to have this weird, complicated stuff,
where
players or a coach because it's all the NCAA's fault. It's all the NCAA's fault. So, like, I don't think the Jaden Rashada thing is representative of a larger concern moving forward, because I think we're going to figure it all out.
I think the thing that's funny to me looking at it now is that, like, you look back a couple of years ago and, like, when Saban would say something and everyone would lose their mind, like, you just don't want to see the kids get paid. And, like, no, this is a very, very unregulated thing. It's in its infancy, right? The other thing is, you remember, like, 5 or 6 years ago when things were so much more normal and the only empty promises that were being made were about, like, playing time and numbers and starting as a freshman. And now we're like, hey, by the way, but $13.85 million for the 6th best quarterback in the recruiting class is just that part is incredible.
Yeah, it's bonkers. But so I agree with you that private equity getting involved is a major concern. That's where I draw the line. But I do think that if you are, a father or a mother who has shared Ole Miss football or
Yeah,
Auburn football or Tennessee football or even Texas or Oklahoma football with their family and friends for their lifetime, because that's what SEC football is all about. It's about, and many other places in the country, but deeper in the SEC, it's about like your community. And
right.
I don't think anything in like College Station actually has changed yet, outside of like the head coach and maybe the
Right.
culture behind the scenes. But like nothing's really changed. And so honestly, what we should be doing this offseason, instead of losing our shit over all the stuff that we perceive to be
Yeah.
messing with our sport, we should be spending time. And again, I'm guilty of this as well because I'm obsessed with expansion, for example, right? Like
Right.
that's the one I can't not talk about. Like I love realignment and expansion and like where North Carolina is going to end up. Like I love that. But I'm with the fans on this. I'm done with the portal. I'm done with NIL. I'm done with the
Yeah.
lawyer. I'm done with Congress. I'm done with it. So if we focus on what 2024 actually is going to be, we're going to have a video game. We're going to have 2 new teams. We've got
Magazines about to come out.
magazines about to come out on newsstand soon, athlonsports.com. Make sure you check that out. We're going to have 4 new coaches in this conference. We have a bunch of new starting quarterbacks. We've got a bunch of great starting quarterbacks coming back, but we got a bunch of new ones that are being heralded as like the savior of a bunch of different organizations.
Yeah.
We're going to have new rivalries. We're going to have a ton of new arguments and debates, which, to your earlier point, Chris, the imperfections of the game is what's made the game so great over the
Yeah.
years. The arguments, the regional right, like we're going to have a whole new set of debates and arguments that people aren't even prepared for yet. And as people who make content, I'm excited about that.
Well, it's also a rare opportunity that SEC fans are probably at some point going to be united, which never happens on anything. Like outside of like ISIS and maybe Notre Dame, like they don't unite on anything. So like now with like
ISIS and
Texas
Notre
and
Dame.
Oklahoma coming in, I feel like people are going to like, probably be a little bit more exclusion. What's the word I'm looking for here?
Exclusionary?
I don't think that's what was going to come out of my mouth, but yes, that is what I was looking for.
Right.
Especially with Oklahoma, because those fans, I said this when they announced they were bringing him in the conference. They're perfect for the SEC because great tradition, good programs, like rabid fan base, also very arrogant and completely oblivious to any other team outside of their own, and they think that their team is better than everything else on the planet. So they're going to fit in perfectly at the SEC.
Yeah. Bo says, Braden's right. First of all, I'll just end there. I think that's where we should end the comment. Braden's right. I just might start a cult around Tommy Moffitt. So there you go. All right. So I guess I'll end with the debates and arguments because it's a little bit more meta and it's a little bit more like controversial, but I do think it's going to make for some extremely fun arguments at the end of the season because there's a lot of situations and scenarios that we haven't discussed yet. But I'll start with like the easiest one, and it's not the old rivalries because those are really, really easy. Texas A&M, I think is going to be spectacular. Getting Texas and Arkansas back. In fact, I think a lot of SEC folks don't know how good Texas A&M is going to be. Texas and Arkansas is fantastic. You got Oklahoma and Missouri, which was kind of a rivalry in the Big 12. Not really, but I think it's getting better. So there's some old stuff that's coming back to life, right? But really, what I'm most interested in from you and what I'm interested in just purely as an SEC fan is all these new things, these new toys we get from a like a games perspective. Like Georgia at Texas as a conference game is something we could get routinely from now moving forward. Tennessee, Oklahoma, exactly. MP says Tennessee, Oklahoma is maybe the game we never knew we always wanted. I was there for Baker Mayfield in Neyland Stadium when in overtime when he makes that play. The place was it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And now the guy who won the national championship is the head coach at Tennessee. Like, this is great. How about Oklahoma at Auburn?
Like, for their first game, for their first SEC game.
That is spectacular. That's spectacular stuff. Florida and Texas. Spectacular stuff. So from just a games perspective, and it doesn't even have to be this season, but obviously we're focused on 24. What are the things you're most looking forward to just from like a teams and matchups and rivalries perspective?
So you mentioned it, but you kind of like dismissed it. Oklahoma and Mizzou is going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be a lot of fun because that is like, that has some very weird, like Fast and Furious 4 vibes of where like these people have a past that we're not really sure what it's all about. We also really don't care. I mean, it's a Mitsubishi Eclipse, guys. It's the Big 12. We don't really care. But those two fan bases hate each other. And I feel like whether it's just from the fans or the actual teams and programs, I feel like that game is circled more than almost any other one for Mizzou, especially because that's like your old bully. It's like your old big brother that like beats you all the time. So I'm excited for that one. Ole Miss and Georgia is one I kind of grew up on. Like the old SEC in like the 90s and stuff like that. Like that should be a good game. It's interesting because with all like all the added games, right? With bringing in 2 new teams, it's crazy that there's still a couple of teams that really kind of fortunate with the scheduling. So like Ole Miss and Mizzou can they can really stack seasons this year because for the first time in I don't know how long Ole Miss hasn't played Bama, right? And you look at both those schedules for those 2 teams, and like I think it's exciting because there's going to be more parity. I just hope there's not a log jam at 10-2 at the end of the season.
Oh, I think there is. And if you want, if we want to preview the debates conversation, like Ole Miss and Missouri are the exact 2 teams that we would point to. Great quarterbacks coming back, established coaches coming off big time seasons. And here's the deal: Missouri will not play Georgia, Texas, the best 2 teams, Tennessee and LSU, possible playoff teams, and then I'm gonna throw Florida in there because they're probably top 10. They're probably 10.
Right.
Ole Miss will miss Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, Missouri, Texas A&M, and Auburn,
and gets Oklahoma and Georgia at home.
And so those 2 programs could be 10-2.
Yeah.
Georgia could be better. Texas could be better. Tennessee could be better, and have not played any of these teams.
Right. I mean,
and have the same record.
Look at Bama's schedule, or like I don't want to get into the Florida thing because that's been going on since even last year. But like I thought it was funny because Oklahoma's schedule is night and day different than what Texas is. Like Texas getting a road game at Vandy and Kentucky at home and Mississippi State in their first year is like
in Arkansas.
But like they got their ass beat by Arkansas the last time they played. I was like, I'm okay with that one.
True, but
the scheduling for Texas versus Oklahoma, I was not a huge. I thought Sankey was going to be like, hey, listen, like now you're in the conference and you get to like put on your big boy pants, and every single weekend, you don't get to take a week off and go play Kansas, which ends up being like an issue for some of those teams, or Iowa State. Like
both 2 good teams actually this year.
Well, yeah. I mean, did you know Iowa State has not had an undefeated regular season of home games since 1936?
I did not know that. Did you know that NC State has never won 10 games in a season?
Yeah, I didn't know that. And Tennessee's got to go to NC
Charlotte.
State. I will say the one thing that's going to be interesting about scheduling moving forward, because there was 4 teams that right before they announced Texas and Oklahoma, it was Bama, Georgia, Florida, and technically South Carolina, that went out and scheduled multiple Power 5 opponents in their non-cons for the next 5 to 10 years. Like, I mean, Georgia and Bama loaded up. Florida, I don't know who. I think Kirby made Florida's schedule. But, like, I think you're going to see a step back from that because, for the most part, like, you're not only be getting, like great games every weekend. Dude, from, like, a viewership standpoint, like, you brought up the Oklahoma-Auburn game. That's the same weekend as Bama-Georgia.
I know. Look, and here's the other problem. And it's not a problem. It's a good thing to have. And it's clearly what television partners want, which is, like there's not a weekend where there's not at least 2, if not 3 marquee matchups.
Right.
And again, that is in general something we should all be like just ecstatic about, like over the moon excited about the things we're going to get to see. I mean, Oklahoma at Ole Miss, what the hell? But sign me up. Sign me up. Like I have no idea how I'm there.
I'm excited for Bama to go 8-4 and still get in the playoff too. That's what I'm really looking forward to.
So I'm saving the debates because I think one is schedules. I think one of the debates we're going to have inside the SEC is going to be like, well, we have one. Georgia goes 8-0 and they're in first place, and then we've got Texas who loses to A&M. You've got Ole Miss who loses to Georgia. You've got Missouri who loses to Alabama. You got Alabama who loses once to Tennessee. Like you could go round and round and round on this, and we could have 3 or 4 teams tied at like 7-1, and maybe they lose another one in non-conference or whatever. And we're not gonna I don't think the SEC's even put out their tiebreaker yet for some of this.
Dude, I don't think it really is as. I don't think it's a benefit to even go to the title game in Atlanta now.
That's another debate. Kirby Smart said it out loud.
Like last year, as much as I hate to say it, but like Kirby Smart and Georgia, they've lost 2 games in 3 years, both on a neutral field, both to Alabama and Nick Saban. But they lost 1 game last season by 3 points with like 5 starters out. And I have zero doubt in my mind that if it was this year, like with the 12-team playoff format, they would have 1,000% gone in. And that's not taking anything away from Michigan or those other teams that were in there, because I still think they were really good teams. But Georgia was seemingly head and shoulders above everyone the entire season.
So I said it. I was actually hosting. It was a humble brag. I was hosting Feinbaum yesterday, and
Nice.
I said, I think I don't. This is not meant to be disrespectful to Michael Penix or Kalen DeBoer or Washington, but Georgia would have stomped Washington, and I think they probably beat Alabama in a rematch. I think they probably beat Texas. And I'd like to see them in a game against Michigan because I thought they were the two best teams in college football last year. And I thought Texas and Bama were the other two best teams. So I think those are the best four. And if you told me Georgia this year goes 10-2, because here's another big new thing that we need to be ready for. The 9-3 versus 10-2 in another conference debate. If Georgia's losses are on the road to Ole Miss, playoff team, on the road to Bama, potential playoff team, on the road to Texas, maybe conference champion, and they finish 9-3, and they've destroyed everybody else. A win over Tennessee, a win over all these other teams, a win over Clemson, maybe the ACC champion, right? Like Georgia could, in theory, be 9-3 and still one of the best, like 5 or 6 teams in college football.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a real, not like a conference on the surface, beat my chest rivalry conversation, but like a real in the committee room. Are we valuing, like, no team should ever go to a conference championship game and get hurt by that because they're now the best two. It's the best two teams now. So if Georgia's 9-3, and their 3 losses are on the road to top 10 teams, that's a debate that other conferences are not ready to hear yet.
I mean, one, Georgia's not going to lose 3 games for sure.
I agree, but
I get what you're saying. And the other thing too is that, like, dude, I mean, it happened 2 years ago. Bama lost 2 games on the last play of the game. They didn't deserve to get in the playoff by any means, but like that was the argument they had, was like, quality of loss. I think that's one thing that'll be interesting because, like, I said this as soon as they made the announcement they were going from 12 to 14. The 2 teams that are going to benefit the most out of the new playoff format are Notre Dame and Penn State. Those 2 teams just live between like 6 and 11 or 6 and 10 in the rankings every single year. They don't, dude. Notre Dame doesn't play a true road game after week 3 until the end of the season.
They're 10-2 every year.
They play 2, and they'll get in, and then they'll also get the 5 spot, which is probably where you want to be if you're Notre Dame.
Strangely enough, I think that Penn State and Notre Dame this year are like at their best. I think, and I think this is one of the Notre Dame's better teams and one of Penn State's better teams. But I agree with you; they benefit. Honestly, Brian Kelly in general, no matter where he's coaching, is going to benefit from the 12 or 14 team thing.
Penn State's not going to have the same easy schedule, but that was, I mean, dude, chalk it up. Every single year it was 10-2. It just, lock of the century. But yeah, it'll be interesting because some of those games too in the Big Ten, it's like I was dreading heading towards a 2 conference, like power conference, setup. Kind of excited to get there because I think one thing SEC fans don't realize is, like, everyone keeps throwing out the idea of like, oh yeah, like we're gonna get in the playoff every year. Like, the SEC's gonna get 4, 5, 6 teams in. We don't know that. We haven't seen a single game played in a season where we've had a 12-team playoff. So,
we're all guessing.
Very interesting.
We're all guessing, and this is I was going to ask you this, and it's not really a new thing, but I am curious because Bo says, can we agree that the SEC championship game either needs to be a part of the playoff or eliminated? That's never going to happen. It makes too much money, and he continues by saying because the East was significantly weaker than the West. Now in the 90s, that was not the case, so it's very cyclical with the 2 divisions. But I'd like to hear your answer to this, and I'm curious because I've just now started thinking about it. Like, financially, the SEC championship game made a fortune for people, but like the divisional format, I'm curious, 20 years from now, we look back at 1992 to 2023 as an era of SEC football when we had 2 divisions and we lost so many great rivalry games. Florida and Auburn, for example, just rarely ever played. Georgia and LSU rarely ever played. The championship game, how many games do you remember truly being epic, historic? Like, when you think of this era and you think of the games that stick in your brain, it's regular season stuff. Sure, 08, 09, Bama, Florida was great. The Urban Meyer Florida team that beat Arkansas, that was a great game. There's a handful of other really good ones. The Bama Georgia games have been pretty good, but there's a lot of blowouts too in the SEC championship game. So my question is do you think history will view the divisional decision as a major success, just sort of a failure? Like, how do you think the divisional format will be viewed long term?
I think nostalgia always wins, no matter what the situation is. For one, I think that the one thing about college football, and I every time anyone's ever asked me, like, since I was like a kid, like, why do you like college football so much? Like, why, like what, like, if you're describing it to somebody, one of the reasons it's like I've always loved it is because I hate to use this word because it sounds dramatic, but the season is so precious. Like you can't lose a game, and that seems kind of stupid and like unfair at times because like you've seen, like some teams in random years, like Georgia last year, Auburn in 2004, technically, even that's a whole other thing I'm not going to get into. But
It
like,
counts though. It counts.
There's several years like where LSU would have won a natty in 2011 if they didn't have to replay Bama. Like there's all these different like kind of like sliding doors that could have changed history. I think the thing with the SEC championship, like that, you don't want to lose from losing divisions. The worst thing that could happen is you get Georgia and Bama 3 times in one season. Because I think you end up cheapening it.
Maybe
You end up cheapening like what the product. Like, how about this? If Ohio State and Michigan played 3 times in the Big Ten, which like if they didn't have divisions before, that's exactly what we would have gotten. They would have played the last week of the season, a week later in Indy, and then maybe again in the playoff. Like that's not. I don't want to like water down the product necessarily, but like I said, like I think that we hated Jefferson Pilot when it was around, and now we look at it, we're like, God, I miss Dave. All them Daves.
Just so many Daves. The other thing about divisions that stands out to me is how many teams just never had it, that never even sniffed Atlanta.
Right.
I mean, good football teams. Like there were so many good football teams that just never. I mean, like I think how many Arkansas got there twice. I think Mississippi State got there once. South Carolina got there once, but otherwise you have like 9 teams that never went to or I guess it's more like 6 teams, but you have like 6 teams that never went. It clearly made a fortune, but it never really truly cost the SEC a national championship outside of maybe 2001 when Tennessee loses to LSU. Tennessee was going to go play in the national championship game that year, but I don't think anyone's picking them to beat Miami, that particular 01 Miami team.
No,
the 90 won that day. The 92 game was brilliant, but like that was the concern that it was going to knock Alabama out of the playoff, out of the national championship. So like from almost every measure, you can say it was successful, but like I don't think it did the best football thing for me. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm excited to see the best 2 teams, which is why I don't think the committee will ever knock a team for losing in a conference championship game. So if you're 10-2, and going back to your Atlanta example or your Alabama example from 2 years ago, like if you'd gone by tiebreakers and there was no divisions, Georgia would have been number 1, Tennessee would have been number 2 because they had the tiebreaker over Bama,
right?
And Bama would have been number 3. So Bama would have sat out the championship game and made the playoff very easily at 10-2.
Yeah.
Tennessee would have been on the fringe of the playoff and then had to play Georgia again. And I'm assuming, when Hendon Hooker, like they would have finished second. If there was
Bama would have sat out. They sat out anyway because they lost to LSU. But like I see what you're saying too. Like,
but they were ahead of LSU in the overall standings. Like overall, they would have been ahead of LSU,
right?
And like because it was just the West that led to LSU winning that division. So in the overall playoff standings, Alabama would not have gone to the championship game, but they would have absolutely gotten into the college football playoff.
Right.
Whereas Tennessee, same record, 10-2, win over Bama head to head, historic game. Carry the goalpost down to the river, like whole deal. Like they would have had to go play Georgia again, and then at 10-3, does the committee put them in? They've already played Georgia. The argument I can already hear it from Big Ten. Oh, they've already played Georgia twice. They had their chance. Like no, that's not how this is. That's not how this is supposed to be, though. This is supposed to be.
It would have been indoors, Braden. It would have been a totally different outcome because like if it was raining. No, I will say that like looking back on it, it is bizarre because like there's so many like. In the 2010s, especially with like those Bama games, 2011 LSU boat race is a good Georgia team. Like the 2012 game was awesome. 2013 was great for about a little over 3 quarters. 2014, fun for about a quarter and a half. I mean, the Bama Florida stint for like 3 years in a row was awful. Like it was just awful.
Terrible. It was bad.
Like I think there was a couple late in like the like I tell you, it was so weird how one-sided it was, no matter like what time or like what like era, because that 2019 LSU team beat the brakes off of a really, really good Georgia team. Yeah. So I mean, I don't want to see anything watered down, anything like that. I will say that I think it'll be fun to see some new blood in there. Like I would love to see Ole Miss, get their chance to play there. Like
I agree. So I agree, and I think part of the new that I'm excited for is this divisional thing that's going to create a bunch of arguments and imbalanced scheduling, and the imbalanced scheduling is going to create more arguments, and it's just going to be this cul-de-sac of like, what do we deserve? And I hope the committee does the right thing in some of these different situations. But if you're asking me sort of like, if I'm here's what I think is going to happen. I think we're going to look at this era of divisions and be like, all right, it worked at the time. and the SEC championship game did what Roy Kramer wanted it to do, which was make a fortune of like just a mountain of cash for the SEC. But it's not been a great game as often as we would like. It's a corporate stale environment as much as we want it not to be. Yeah. It's not a college campus. It's not Death Valley. It's not Neyland Stadium. It's not these places that we that are revered in our blood. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to have this period of time of no divisions. And then as soon as we expand again, we're going to go back to like 4 divisions. Yeah. And so it's like we're going to have this little window here where we should all enjoy 1 to 16 top 2 playing in the championship game and be done with it. And I think we should enjoy it because I think it's going to be very fun, but it's not going to last forever.
No, I will say also that the one thing that's like positive about this is this is going to sound super arrogant, but like as somebody that grew up as like a Bama fan and even like covering it like in the last 6-7 years, I would talk to fans and like one of the worst things I heard from fans like was 2017, 2018, 2019. Oh, I'm not going to the SEC championship game. I'm not going to the Orange Bowl. I'm not going to go to Dallas because I've already been to Dallas, and then we're saving up for the Natty. Like it got expensive going to all those things, and I think that's like one thing that really kind of became, especially in this economy, it kind of became like a difficult thing for fans because it's like, that 2018 season where Bama played Clemson, right? Bama won the SEC championship in Atlanta against a top 4 team against Georgia, goes to Miami to play Oklahoma, and then goes out to Santa Clara or wherever it was in out like on the Bay. And then, like stuff like that. Like that is if you remember, like the tickets for that game were like $79.
And now I need you to buy me a backup slot corner too.
Right. Yeah. That's a really good point.
And you have to travel to 3 neutral site games on top of the SEC championship game because now there's 3 rounds of neutral site games. So not only am I going to ask you to go to the SEC neutral site, probably neutral site in week 1, although credit to Greg Byrne, athletic director for Alabama, for trying to get away from those games. Going to Madison, Wisconsin is a phenomenal decision. I think it's a great thing. It's a great thing for Bama fans. It's a great thing for Wisconsin. It's great for the Big Ten and the SEC. But you're going to have to go to Atlanta and then sit out a week so you don't get to host a game at home. Good job. There's your reward. Don't get me wrong. I like the bye, but like now we're back into complaining about the new system. And I don't want to do that because I hate the bowl games just being gifted 3 rounds of the playoff. I think that's so stupid. But I do think, when you add North Carolina and Oklahoma State and whatever we add, there's going to be like 4 6-team divisions again, and it's going to go back to feeling like an NFL, AFC, or NFC.
That's what I don't want is the NFL. There's a reason I don't watch the NFL as much. Like just don't copy and paste that,
Well, there is, whether it's scheduling or the SEC championship or whatever, we'll move on because I want to stay focused on all the exciting things, which is all the new games we're going to get and like the random stuff we're going to get, like Kentucky and Texas. That's just so random to me. But conference game. I think is it their first conference game? I think it is. Texas
Kentucky got fed to the wolves on that one, man. That is a tough setup.
Yeah, it's bad. If you give me 5 seconds here, I could figure it out. I think what is Texas's first SEC game?
Their schedule, they have Michigan in week 2 on the road, and then after that, it's like there's really only 2 games until the end of the season against A&M, and they're sandwiched back to back with Oklahoma.
It's Mississippi State at home on week 5 as their first.
They get Mississippi State, Vandy on the road, and Kentucky at home.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that new stuff. It's going to be weird. It's going to be fun, but I can't wait. From a player standpoint, if I could tell, I'm going to tell you, like, from a quarterback player standpoint, you get Nico, you get Jackson Arnold, maybe it's Garrett Nussmeier. You pick one of these new names that is taking over at a program that thinks it's got playoff caliber aspirations. And I would argue all 3 of those teams should feel that way. Mm-hmm. You can bring in Texas if you want to count, they're new to the league, but like Quinn Ewers has been around a long time. From a new player standpoint, who is the name you have circled to watch this year?
Dude, it's Nico. It's Nico, like times a billion. I'm excited to see Lenore Sellers just because those goggles that he wears, and he is just like a lanky. He's like if Manute Bol and Horace Grant had a baby, like that. Like he's somewhere in between. I'm excited to see Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma. I keep saying this, and I'll die on this hill before the season starts. I think there had to be somewhat of a reason that Venables was okay with losing Dylan Gabriel. And here's the thing about college football too. We always do this going into the season. We know everything that's going to happen, right? We're so confident in like what our team's going to do, what like our rivals are going to do, blah, blah, blah. There's always, especially a young quarterback over the last decade or so that just goes off. and I don't know what all he's got around him, but I like from like a skill position standpoint. But I do know Oklahoma has always recruited really well on the offensive and defensive lines, so I think they're going to be somewhat ready for that. But going back to the answer, man, it's Nico. And the one unique thing I feel like we get with this specific class in this year, we get really, really elite level recruits at quarterback, and they've all been in the system for a year. They sat, which you rarely see. Like you rarely see that anymore. And I'm such a huge proponent of that because it's like you see what it did for Carson Beck, right? Like the other one, like Aaron Rodgers is a perfect example, like for it as well. But like in college right now, there's no better example than Carson Beck. Nico's sitting a year behind a quarterback that he probably could have started over and learning the offense, learning the playbook, all that kind of stuff. And now he's got probably the deepest just embarrassment of riches at receiver that Tennessee's probably had since, I don't know.
I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet.
They are loaded. And like
Okay,
Mike Matthews is like an afterthought, the 5-star kid from my high school. I think they are going to be really, really good. And here's the thing, man. None of us knew about Jalen Hyatt before that, like before what do you call it, 2022, really?
Yeah.
And then he wins the Biletnikoff. So like I feel like that is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
I think it's absolutely Nico. But to your point, Garrett Nussmeier's been at LSU for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Now losing Mike Denbrock hurts, so it's a different system. But been there for a while, and he takes over with largely unproven. Connor Wigman, same thing, new system with Colin Klein, but I think Connor Wigman's a really high level player. Again, these are all big time recruits, right? Like Wigman, Jackson Arnold sitting behind Dylan Gabriel. Here's what I would say about Arnold. I agree with you that they clearly felt comfortable letting Dylan Gabriel go to Oregon. I totally agree with you. But I think the schedule was too difficult, and you lose Lebby, your play caller, and you lose all 5 of your offensive linemen. I think it's sort of the combination of everything that means his learning curve is a little steeper. Whereas if you look at Tennessee, elite defensive line, elite offensive line, and you sort of ease your way into the schedule a little bit. Like NC State's a good quality football team, a challenge, a good quality defense. Tony Gibson does a good job on that team. Like they should win the game, but it's a good challenge. And then you're into Oklahoma. And then after that, it's like, all right, you got Bama at home.
Dude.
The schedule sets up for Nico to sort of go off by the end of the year. And if they do, and they lose to Georgia and one more game at 10-2, they are in the playoff for sure.
Tennessee, it is shocking to me how little the national media is talking about them, because and maybe I'm sure I'm going to regret this, just because like people always say like, oh, college football is better when Tennessee is relevant. That is true. I don't necessarily know if that extends to the fan base as much, just with my personal experience with Vol Twitter, which is a whole other story. But I mean, like
I'm an alumni, and I've had some bad moments with Vol Twitter. So
yeah, I got over 1,000 messages, and my mom got several horrible words said, or she's a pastor, because I accurately predicted what was going to happen to them against Georgia in 2022. But moving forward, like this season, Clay Travis had that comment a couple weeks ago, and people thought it was like clickbait, and he's just trying to get clicks and stir the pot, whatever, about Tennessee beating Bama by double digits. I don't know why people are like dismissing that. I don't like that. I feel like the 2 games on Bama's schedule, looking at it that are guaranteed losses, in my opinion, are Georgia at home and then Tennessee on the road. Like, because it's the matchup itself. Like you saw with what Heupel did to Pete Golding in that defense 2 years ago, because they couldn't figure out how to take a safety off of Hyatt for 60 straight minutes.
They were good in the first half last year, and then totally shut down in the second half.
But Bama's gutted at defensive back.
No, I know.
Gutted. I think Tennessee's going to be really, really good.
No, I agree with you. And I think if you say lose to Georgia on the road, and then you just say they got Florida at home, there's some demons there. Mm-hmm. They're on the road against Oklahoma, but it's early in the Oklahoma tenure, so I think that's beneficial for Tennessee, but still very tough. Josh Heupel returning home, lots of emotion. And then the Bama at home. If you go 2-1 in those games and don't fuck it up in the other situations where you are probably more than a touchdown favorite, I don't think 11-1 is out of the question. But I do think 10-2 is a sweet spot for them. And I think it's because it's all about like how long does it take Nico's light to go on, and I don't think it's going to take all that long. But NC State and Oklahoma in the first 4 weeks is a good barometer. Those are good defensive coaches, good defensive teams, not elite, but very good. And we're going to see what happens with Nico. But if you're asking me, players, there's a lot of players I'm looking forward to. Like, and somebody asked earlier about the Georgia defensive front. Like, I want to see William, I want to see Michael Williams, I want to see Malachi Starks. Like, there's a lot of players that I'm looking forward to, but they're kind of names we know. The guys that will change. I could argue Nico is the most important player in the conference.
Yeah.
Like if it hits and it hits right, it changes the entire league. If it doesn't, it changes the entire league.
I think it'll be interesting to see because it's admittedly doing this job now, man. It's difficult to like keep up with everything because of all of the moving parts and they're like the revolving door. And like, I just keep going back to this when it comes to like the breakout players and stuff like that. Like Georgia hasn't stopped recruiting. They're also one of the very unique situations where they don't lose a lot of guys in the portal. Like they just don't. Like I think there's a lot of teams where it's like, yeah, we lost this many people. Not like Colorado, but it's like you lost a bunch of people, you replaced them, right? Like, you know, that's fine. A&M's done it the past 2 years, like that's whatever. But Georgia just hoards talent, and there are guys on that defensive line. Like the thing that made that 2021 defense so special is that you had elite guys everywhere, and you were rotating like 25 snaps a game with other people that were like basically like part-time starters and
part-time first round picks.
Dude, like and now he's doing it on both sides of the ball. What Kirby's doing it really is incredible. Like, but yeah, I think there's several guys like that like, you know, I remember reading a stat a couple of years ago. I think it was two years ago that going into the 2023 season, 247 Sports had started ranking the edge rusher as its own position unit with their recruiting rankings for 3 years. And in those 3 years, there was only 10 total 5-stars up to that point. 8 of them were in the SEC. And I think 6 were at Bama, like 1 was at, or 2 was, one was at Georgia.
It's funny you bring that up. I was at Titans OTAs yesterday, and they've got Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat as their 2 defensive tackles. And I looked at the highest paid defensive tackles on the planet. So the 11 best defensive tackles in the world all went to SEC schools or Clemson. Literally.
Yeah.
Literally, it's Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence went to Clemson. There's one other kid, Javon Hargrave, went to South Carolina State, but he's from North Carolina. Literally every other, Chris Jones, Jeffrey Simmons, Matabuke from Texas A&M, Derek Brown from Auburn. Again, you go down the list, you can keep Barrymore, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, like literally every single defensive tackle, the best ones in the world, all are from the SEC. And you know, I just noticed the Titans are like, you know, they got Jeffrey Simmons, who's like number 5 or 6 on the list, and then they go draft a 370-pound, you know, run stuffer from Texas to put him next to him. And it's like, well, he counts now too. Like he's in
awesome, man. I'm happy for your draft as a Falcons fan. I'm really
not
glad you could enjoy that.
That right there above my head is a share of Green Bay Packers stock. I am an owner of the Green Bay Packers. So don't get that shit screwed up. I cover the Titans. I root for the Packers. Those are 2 different things. All right. What about the coaches? Jeff Lebby and Mike Elko are the new ones, but Brent Venables, Steve Sarkisian. I'm looking forward to Steve Sarkisian being in the league and messing with some shit. I think it's gonna be fun. But honestly, Mike Elko is the one that I care the most about. He's the guy that I think he's going to take some lumps early as they like learn to be themselves. And then I would not want to mess with. I would not want to mess with Texas A&M the rest of the way. What about coaches?
So it's interesting with A&M because like one of my buddies, Chris Phillips, said this the other day, and I think it's one of the smarter things I've heard in the entire offseason. But it was like, why can't we just let A&M like underwhelm us and like just fly below, like go below the radar and have the chance to like overwhelm us and exceed expectations. We just don't ever give them the opportunity to do that. So it's weird. Like if you talk to anybody close to A&M, 1, wash your hands afterwards, but then 2, they're very confident right now. Like they are very confident. And like it's weird because it's like you open up with a top 10 team in Notre Dame, like you lost a ton of people, like, you know, obviously you have a new coach, but Mike Elko, when he was there, I mean, that was a top 20 defense for 4 straight years. Like that was a very, very salty defense. They've got weapons still. So I think it'll be interesting because that's another schedule that like, you know, they miss Bama. That A&M Texas game at the end of the year is going to be electric. So I'm excited for him. The Lebby situation is like, it feels like there's going to be a couple of schools that are going to have just, you know, like we're going to be hiring Ryan the temp, you know, once every 3 years. Like there are going to be a lot more Auburns in this league now, I think, where you have Lebby's going in a situation that no other program in the country is having to face. Like just, you know, You lose your head coach tragically out of nowhere. You hire his D coordinator, who a lot of people thought was like ready to take on the role of being a head coach. After one season, he's gone. Like Levy seems like he is not just like loud or not just like, you know, trying to be flashy and score from far and all that kind of stuff when he was the OC at Ole Miss. It seems like there's substance to what he's trying to build there. It's just going to be tough to build it in Starkville, especially when you add Oklahoma and Texas.
So I like the strategy of going different. Like if you're at Mississippi State, if you're Vanderbilt, like I think
run the option.
I think you have to be different. So I like that strategy of getting a coach who's going to run something different on offense. I don't think the strategy of like hiring a coach just to troll your rival is necessarily the best strategy, because there's definitely layers of like, it's not that Jeff Lebby wasn't ready or that he's not going to be good. It's that he and Lane Kiffin have this weird backstory, and they're running all this stuff at Ole Miss, so they're hot and heavy right now. I think they actually benefit from the divisional change. You're not stuck with all the same exact teams every single year. Doesn't mean the schedule's easy, but I think they benefit. I'm just curious what it looks like. I don't think Blake Shapen is anything special. I liked him at Baylor, but I don't love him in this offense. So he had trouble. He was pretty athletic at times, but didn't put the ball down the field where he needed to be. Right. So I don't know. It feels very Kiffin-y. Yeah, as Bo said, like it feels like a troll job to hire him, even though that's not fair to him necessarily. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those things where it's like, if you look at the history of Mississippi State, I'm not trying to, you know, be a dick or like kind of like, you know, shit on that program. I really am not.
It's a very tough job. It's a very tough
job. That is a program that had, I think, up until the last couple of years, they had 5 total like 9-win seasons or 10-win seasons. Like it's been very few and far between. I will also say, I mean, they've made a bowl game in like 12 of the last 13 years or 13 of the last 14. So I do love the idea that they could like live in that world still, even though they're in the SEC, like get to a postseason, have things that still matter. And again, like you said, like the not having divisions is going to be good for them, because there's one thing that'll be good for those kids. Like if you're an athlete and you are at a lesser school, like you're going to get up for the bigger games. But it's probably nice not seeing like Bama on the schedule every single year, or LSU necessarily, or like
Bama, LSU, Auburn, A&M, all like back to back to back. Like
exactly. And so then it's like, you know, like going on the road to Oklahoma or going on the road in Austin and like being able to like shock the world and stuff like that. I think like those type of things I think are like good to kind of revive the enthusiasm of a program. I tell you what, this is going to sound stupid, and I don't care. Every year, me and my co-hosts make the same prop bet at the start of the year of like the over for wins for Vandy, and like it seems like almost every year it hits in like September because they're non-con schedule.
Except for last.
I'm excited to see that quarterback, man. He's already won on the road in an SEC environment, like for real. Like I don't think they're gonna do.
No, I know.
That, but like
no, if you rank the 16 quarterbacks and say which starting quarterback is under the least pressure to win, it is Diego Pavia.
Right.
He is under the least amount of pressure. No one's paying attention. No one's watching, and he's much better than they've had at Vanderbilt in a while. So, no, I'm with you. I just think we're in for. I think we need to prepare for the for the unexpected. I think there's going to be a lot of games that are very, very good. I think there's so many quality teams with good quarterbacks. You mentioned 5-stars, like DJ Lagway is a guy who's going to play for Florida. That's another 5-star elite recruit that's coming in. Sellers is another one to watch. We've got new quarterbacks. We've got new coaches. We've got new teams. We have a new division. We have a new format. We have a new playoff. We have here's the other thing. We talk about this all the time, and this is a little bit more like meta and more like football nerd. But like offensive lines are struggling, and defense is kind of coming back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And coaches are realizing how to play against these spread super quarterbacks, and they can run 2 high safety looks and slow everybody down and like sort of play everything umbrella coverage. Like, what is the thing that like Steve Sarkisian is going to ruffle some feathers with something that he does? What is the scheme thing that is the hot thing that we don't know about? It's going to happen this year. And we got Lane Kiffin and Josh Heupel and Steve Sarkisian and Kalen DeBoer and all these brilliant offensive minds. Something is going to be different than what we've seen before. Maybe it's what Kalen DeBoer does with Jalen Milroe. I don't know, but it's going to be fun.
I think Florida has a chance to look a little bit similar to like, it won't be the same, obviously, but like that 2006 year where it's like you have Tebow come in as a freshman. He has to be like the fact that DJ Lagway stayed in that class with everything else that was like happening like around that program, he's going to get playing time. So I'm excited to see that. Like
it's gonna be Jake. It's gonna be sorry to interrupt. It's gonna be Jake Fromm, Justin Fields packages.
I disagree because I think that Napier probably knows how to handle that a little bit better than Kirby did at the time.
Okay.
Like there's no chance Lagway is going to go out there on a fake punt on 4th and 11 in the biggest game of the year.
I just meant like the skill set of Lagway versus the skill set of Mertz is very similar to the skill sets of Fromm and Fields, and the 5-star kid's going to get the playing time over the veteran kind of deal. And I just think I think they're going to have packages for him. And yes, I agree. They'll handle it much better than Kirby did, which was bad that year.
I think that like that situation, I kind of wonder how long the leash is for Peyton Thorne down at Auburn.
That's a good one.
I mean, that entire quarterback room is like, O-Town white. It is just the like Holden, like every single person in there, it feels like they were born out of like a just the worst gender reveal party I'd never wanted to go to. I will also say one of the things I'm most looking forward to from like a scheme situation, like Sark and Kiffin in my mind have always been, or for the last 5 to 10 years, have been the two best offensive minds in all of football at any level. Just the way they're able to get people open and scheme guys open. There's zero reason that like Devontae Smith at 165 pounds scored 23 touchdowns in the COVID year. Like that's insane. So I'm excited to see that. I think where that could really be the most fun to watch for like a fan, if Ole Miss gets the playoff, right? Like that is, I think, the one like wild card that other teams don't have, because like you give Kiffin time to prepare for like a slower Big Ten team. Listen.
No, I agree. I agree on that. But when it comes to the 5-star teams down here, he hasn't shown that he can beat them. So
completely agree with that. But I do think that like if there's a way to translate like a team getting hot in March and just like being like unconscious from 3, I do think it's that type of offense where it's like, man, like we are just like the LSU.
It's going to be Tennessee. I'm telling you, it's Tennessee because they've got the defensive line to package with the fancy 3-point shot, right?
Right.
Like, and I think I agree. And then Bo makes a great point again. Of course, Luther Burden and Brady Cook, very underrated in this conversation. We absolutely should not underrate them. They should be rated highly. They're losing a lot more around those two guys on defense and the coaching staff. So that's why. But their schedule again, Missouri misses Georgia and Texas and Tennessee and LSU. It's 4 of the top 7 teams like right there that they're going to miss. So I think I know we got a long way to go and magazines are coming out. So we're going to have rankings, but I think there's 7 or 8 playoff teams. We got new coaches, new quarterbacks, new everything. I think it's going to be absolutely spectacular. We got the video game coming out. I think people are losing their shit over all this stuff that will not matter on Saturdays. We spend all off season yelling at each other about this stuff, and I am guilty of it. But then as soon as it's done, as soon as camp opens and as soon as those games start, it's lights, it's blinders on. Let's go play ball and let's have fun. And I think it's going to be an insane season. First season ever, 12-team playoff, Texas, Oklahoma. I think it is going to be absolutely unprecedented what we are going to see.
Honestly, I know this is an SEC show, but I'm kind of excited to see that the Big Ten finally has a little bit more depth to it as well. And like I think it'll be fun to see. A lot of times in the SEC, it's like, you're the best conference, but it is like this unfair gauntlet that other teams just aren't having to go through. Michigan didn't play a ranked team until week 11 or week 13 last year. Yeah. I'm excited to see like other teams kind of have to go through a difficult gauntlet and road games, stuff like that the SEC's been doing for years.
The ACC will not. I think it's been tamped down, even though I think there are 5 or 6 or 7 teams that are pretty good at the top. They're just not great. I think the Big 12, again, no great teams, but along the lines of what you're saying, every single game in the Big 12 is going to be the same.
Right.
It's just like, it doesn't pick 2 teams out of a hat and be like Iowa State, Texas Tech, and Utah versus Arizona, and Colorado versus Oklahoma State. Like, it's all the same. Every single game is the same.
The end of the year, Utah's final game, rivalry weekend, is a road game at UCF.
Of course.
I hate it.
And I think Utah, watch Gus Malzahn knock somebody else out of the playoff.
Right.
Look, Gus has got a good thing going there. UCF's going to be sneaky good this year. So Big 12 is going to be super balanced and interesting. I don't think there's a lot of great teams. Every other league is interesting this year, except for the ACC. It's the one that's sort of like, But 12 teams.
And none of the top 5 teams in the ACC play each other, by the way.
I agree. Chris, tell everybody where they can find you, please.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. So Chris Marler, Burn Funquist CFB on social media. Like I said, the Fourth and Wrong podcast, we just launched it about a month and a half ago. So check that out on YouTube and Twitter and all those things. Like, subscribe. I hate saying it, but it'd be super helpful.
It's very helpful.
Yeah. So the podcast, social media, and at ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge as well. And that's about it.
There you go, man. Always a pleasure talking with you. One of the more entertaining dudes to talk to about SEC football. So I really appreciate you coming on and hanging out. Special thanks to Bo and everybody else in the comment section for hanging out, and for all you folks watching. Thumbs up on the YouTube, retweets, shares everywhere else. We do appreciate you guys. If you're listening on the podcast app, again, like Chris said, please do it. Write the review. And if you do not give us 5 stars, you are a hater. That is Chris Marler. I am Braden Gall. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you guys next week.